We're still here at the scene of this terrible disaster, caused by a massive tornado which swept through sectors 0, 1, and 2. Amidst the wreckage of the expressway, search and rescue operations are already in progress.
They're not dead! I may be saying this as copium. It was pretty harrowing in that 7 Remake trailer to see our most beloved characters flop the hell out. Nanaki just geared, Tifa's arm just flopping, Aerith looking pretty banged up. Was good buff. So I want to do a multi-series of vids because, guys, I, even for myself, have just blown the lid. Spent an entire day yesterday researching back into the remake, looking into all of the things that had honestly gone into the back of my mind, including things like the numerous inconsistencies in the chronology of things. I'm going to try to avoid saying the word timeline because, guys, honestly, I think we've all been looking at this wrong. There have, in my opinion, never been timelines. Nothing to do with the setup of 7 Remake, the peculiarities, where Zack is, you know, the events that we've seen, like Zack and Aerith crossing each other at the Midgar Wastes, the sparkly doodads falling. No, well, when Zack's just stayed alive during his final fight, the sparkles fell for him, and then they also fell for Marl and the others, you know, post Sector 7 pillar collapse, and they're trying to rebuild, and those things are all happening simultaneously. And what we've seen is that there's a month discrepancy within the game where, you know, events that happened a month prior are happening in the here and now. And that also includes Cloud, the way he's inserted into the game. In OG, he was kind of in an ill state. No, Tifa found him at the train station, was rehabilitating him for about a month. None of that has happened. He's just shown up back in Midgar, and things have fundamentally changed. And now we've got all the Terrier timeline, the Beagle timeline, we've got different Amako reactor layouts, different stickers on them. The church sometimes has a cross, sometimes it doesn't. We've gone through Destiny's portal. What is going on? It is blowing people's minds, and I love it, and rightfully so. FF7 wouldn't be FF7 if it weren't mentally bamboozling us. And so what I love about these change up, these significant departures from the originals events, which, even if we just go to the latest trailer, which I will cover this more significantly in another video, Tifa, such a prominent role in this new remake, I believe. But even just the nature of her saying to Aerith, where was Cloud? I don't believe he was there 5 years ago. And Aerith kind of been like, well, why are you asking me? How should I know? You know, Aerith, because you know stuff. You've demonstrated to Tifa that you know stuff. And Tifa, throughout all of the remake, was often turning to Aerith and, what are you not telling us? What are you not saying? So this idea that she would confide, a big part of what comes like much later in FF7 OG, which is when Tifa really starts questioning things, the events of Nibelheim, which he largely remains quiet about, we're seeing as early as the Calm Inn, and that's crazy. That is very, very crazy, very, very different and very significant. So I'm going to take you guys on a little journey, and each one of these vids is going to get progressively more and more complex, because I honestly think I have found the solution to what boggles everyone's mind, which is trying to think about this in timeline sense. Which, you know, when we think about time, we think about a chronological sequence of events. The flow of time to us is linear, and so when we think about time, we fall into the trap of thinking in linear patterns. How are the events in this remake happening? Why are they happening? The sequences are all off. You know, people trying to figure out, like creating like timeline charts and stuff. Like, okay, so at what point did Sephiroth like project himself back and reopen this? And how are these like multiverse timeline events like branching out because Sephiroth has gone in and fundamentally changed things? And this isn't necessarily a wrong way to think about it. It's just what I believe very limiting, and honestly is what for me is the most frustrating part about what we saw in the latest trailer. So I could be completely wrong with this, guys. The beauty of Final Fantasy VII is that it has 1,000 interpretations. Square Enix set it up so that we all have different interpretations, different theories, they lean into this. Now, of course, some things do happen definitively, but I mean, just go back to OG, look at the ending of FF7. How interpretive that was. There was no clear defined outcome. What happened to the planet? What happened to humans as a whole? And even among the developers themselves, they've literally had different opinions on what happened. So I just want to lead out the gate. With this, there is no right or wrong, but I definitely think there is better ways of looking at things, and what I think is just more likely that Square Enix are going to do. And that's why I need to address them being dead or not dead, whichever one is it. So first and foremost, let's just set up what this scene was. The freaking news show, you've got Sector 0, 1 and 2, I think it was. They've just been leveled by a tornado. And we see just at the very start of the trailer a half-second glimpse of the Midgar Highway. We see the tornado, and then we see the news coverage, of which we see our characters seemingly comatose and or deceased. Right there is the mind blow. Because, of course, if you think about it in timelines, we were on Remake timeline. And Remake timeline, different to OG timeline. Sephiroth's come back, changed stuff up, Aerith is aware of it. It largely follows what happened in the OG, but there's differences. Characters are re-remembering stuff. And this is what we call now the Beagle timeline. And, then we go through Destiny's portal. And this is the significant thing, right? We go through Destiny's portal, we go to a significantly different place. And this is where we fight Sephiroth. This is where the tornado rips. So if you're thinking in timelines, you'd end up thinking, okay, so we've gone to a different universe, like we've gone onto a different timeline. Well, you could say that, or you could also say we've just gone to a different gradient of the live stream. And I've said this gradient thing often, but what I'm actually going to start calling it is the Clyde paths. Alright, this is going to be very complex, and I'll explain this probably on my next video, or my third one. But Clyde paths, more or less, they're spiritual shells or husks in which various different sub-realities that are dictated by how far from purity they have descended. And this is all Kabbalistic lore, which is what the Sephiroths and Sephiroth, the one-winged angel, of which in this Kabbalistic lore there was an angel that was descended down into the material world to share in human suffering. And I'm not going to get too much into that in this video. Just be sure to subscribe, ding that all notification button, because I've even figured out what the sparkly, the little doodads that came down. One of them went into Biggs, and Biggs seems like he's now alive again. But yeah, I'm going to start calling them the Clypoths, which are essentially concentric circles of materiality, material world, that exist around inherently core spiritual structures, of which the live stream is. This entire game is built upon spiritual premises, and I think the problem with timeline thinking is you're thinking too much in a linear fashion from the mind of like a scientist. How does this logically work? How does this realistically work? What is the reality? What is like the mechanic going on? Rather than realizing, no, this is something that metaphysical and therefore exceptionally complex, exceptionally multifaceted, and also very high fantasy. And I think too many people are trying to think sensibly, and they definitely do that when people are trying to, in my opinion, not everyone, some people have some fantastic like timeline ideas, but the biggest issue I have with them, and why I see loads of people be like, yep, they're dead, is what they're wanting to is they have a predefined bias that they don't like all of this timeline stuff. It's all nonsense. It's all crazy. It's all so much of a far gone departure from like original FF7, and for the longest of times they've been trying to deny. I still get people writing comments to me saying, you keep talking about all these things that have changed in 7. Nothing has changed. Bros, I understand what it is to want a faithful remake of a beloved game and not to have it too changed, the tonality and the happenings too far gone and stretched. But if at the end of the day, after what we have seen in this remake, if after seeing 2 Midgars, we're seeing the crew friggin' fighting Sephiroth and Cloud going into space, the edge of creation, if Aerith's warnings about Sephiroth has done something, he's messed things up on a very fundamental level, if none of that is enough to show you clearly, definitively, even in their notes saying that things are going to be very, very different at this point. If you are still trying to scramble back to a one-for-one remake, like for like, I don't know what to tell you. You're deluding yourself. And to see that trailer, which supports even more the departure into a different direction of things. And it's not necessarily even different, it's just greatly accelerated. Events that should have happened further down the line are being ripped forward into the here and now. Now, Zack being back, great example of it. But even people try to diminish him being back to just the most limited and, in my opinion, simplistic interpretations of things. Oh no, he's just been stuck back in the game. And he's on the same timeline as all of our characters, and when he ran into the church, you know, he just like hung around in Midgar for like an extra month for like no particular reason, even though he was super eager to see Aerith. No, he just hung around for over a month after escorting Cloud back, and when he ran into the church, that was after the Sector 7 pillar collapse. And those are just survivors, you know, even though they're staring up against the wall and like zerging out. Or some people try to say, no, they're mourning Aerith's death. You know, they've leapt forward in the timeline. Zack is like, you know, he walks through a white gate, he's just taken Cloud back, now he's skipped forward to when Aerith died, and suddenly there's loads of people who care about Aerith and they're crying for her. I don't buy any of this. What we need to realize is Najima is one of the writers on this, and he has built the universe up, as too has Nomura. Of course, Advent Children, Dirge of Cerberus, but even some of the Ultimania and the manga stuff, the Livestream White and Black chapters, the Maiden Who Travels Through the Planet, where they set up this extremely elaborate, almost kind of like war scenario in the Livestream, the war that's happening, the souls that exist in there. Aerith meets like Jessie, Dean, Wedge, Biggs. She starts like congregating souls onto her side. They start merging with her. She starts becoming like a goddess of the Livestream, and she meets Sephiroth in there and sees him creating remnants of himself, and she wonders if she could do the same. Like create Aerith remnants that could go to the surface and meet Cloud, but she wouldn't want to do that because she wants him to remember her as she fully is, and that she wouldn't want to mess with his free will in any kind of way. So she stays on the live stream, and she's congregating all these souls, amassing them to fight the upcoming threat. And she's actually sending, it says in the major trailer, she sends them to safe havens within the live stream, pocket dimensions, realities that she has some semblance of access to within the live stream. She can access, she can pass souls to it. And we know that there's a network of like live stream kind of connections. Minerva's Grove to the flower bed in Aerith's church and various other nexus points around the world. And to think that as Sephiroth is now corrupted, post-Advent Children, and even what I personally think happened is I think that as Cloud, because we've got to remember where the story of 7 has gone up to, it's way past Advent Children. They've written it up to the stage where he basically moves on, moves past the fear, the regret and the hatred that he has for Aerith's death, Zack's death. You know, Cloud smiles. He finds some sort of peace with it. And it says that he moves on to live a happy, normal, family dynamic life with Tifa. Sorry, Clariths. I know you really want the Cloud and Aerith thing to happen, but maybe. No, I'm not going there. I'm not getting into a shipping war in this video. Basically, they raise like Marlene and Denzel. It's kind of a normal family unit. Now, I can imagine that Cloud kind of lived out that life to quite a late stage, relatively peaceful. And Sephiroth, I think that's the part at which he panicked, which is in seeing Cloud's mortality, that eventually he would die, and by definition his only tether back to existence, it only exists in Cloud's memory. Sephiroth is reliant on Cloud's memory. If Cloud doesn't remember him, Sephiroth has no way to return. And I think in realizing that Cloud was eventually going to die, that's when he and Genova, with all the terror crop that they had sown into the planet, with all of the souls that, as written in Maiden Who Travels to the Planet, they had corrupted onto their side, that had made them vicious and angry. Like Aerith, at some point, she goes to try to like help some of them move on, like she did Jessie, Dean, and Biggs and Wedge, and they actually attack her. That's how much Sephiroth had poisoned them. What you gotta realize is memory is, the live stream is a number of things. It's the souls of the planet, it's thereby the memories of the planet, and it is defined to us that memory is what dictates the flow of the live stream, And the flow of the live stream is what creates time itself. Time itself, guys. And that is so significant, because that is what unravels, or at least jeopardizes, I think, or limits people trying to think of this in timelines. Is what they're not realizing is that the flow of time is only linear when the live stream flows in its regular current. That's not happening at this point. It's been stagnated. It's been fiddled, manhandled, messed the fuck up by Superhero. And by the very nature of Sephiroth coming back into this story, that within itself is showing us how much power he has actually gained over this thing, that he is able to manipulate what we perceive as time and reinsert himself back. And what I think we've got to realize in that reinsertion is that Sephiroth has no problem with messing up the chronology of things. When he came back, there is a reason why Cloud didn't come into the game in the same way at all. I even believe someone like Roche, I still believe it, that Roche was the soldier that got abandoned on the Nibelheim Mountains. He knows Cloud, he has a personal vendetta that's told to us, the developers, and he's going to keep being significant going forward. I only just learned he was supposed to be at the end of the Midgar Highway. He was supposed to show up there. I know not everyone likes Roche, and I honestly find him somewhat insufferable as well. But he's just like this chaotic, crazy force brought into the game, on top of all the other chaotic, crazy stuff that's happened. I mean, literally, we see Sephiroth actively setting them up at times, inserting false memories into Cloud, showing up in places to cause these ripples, to fuck things up. That's what stabbing Barrett was about. He's been testing Destiny, the planet's need to hold on, and what forces it will use, what defenses it will use to try to hold on to the events that it knows it will survive. It doesn't want to go into a uncertain future, which is what Sephiroth, at the education said. That which lies ahead does not yet exist. That's the whole premise of the Rebirth. It's all been ripped open, and now anything can happen. Although things can happen differently, and that fate has been changed, and that characters can change their destiny, I think we're on a new timeline. We're just in, again, a different glide path. We're just in a different state of the live stream, a different purity versus corruption. And what I think has happened is the one that we've just seen has been abandoned to the corruption. I honestly think this is going to be the worst case scenario timeline. The one we have just left, the one that Zaki is on, the one that Biggs has just woken up to, and the one that Clone Cloud is going to be existing on. Now, when I first saw that in the new trailer, Cloud Reunion, my first initial thought was, don't take that too seriously. That's just another mental geek of Clouds. We saw one in the Shinra Underground. He's like a Mako tank with a body in it, and he projects himself with a creepy green eyes and face. Even though that actually happened, he wasn't a tank. But do you know what I mean? It was just like a mental projection. And not to read too much into it. And we've had many of those. You could say the VR sequence that we saw, Tifa Barrett getting stabbed and whatnot, which I'll quickly say, I'll talk about the Tifa part later, because a lot of people are taking it very literal. They said, I killed Tifa, so who's she? Oh my god, she's been dead the whole time. She's an imposter. That happened in the original. That was set up. This is a way for Sephiroth to mess with Cloud's head and getting him to distrust Tifa, which is his main tether. Right, the main tether that reconstructs his memories. She is the main force that prevents Sephiroth winning over the battle for Cloud's mind. And he didn't take her seriously enough in OG. He definitely taken her seriously now. He's inserted Clone 49, which, spoken about the numerology of that. We never had clones go that high. 49 in the Tibetan Book of the Dead means purgatory. In the Kabbalistic lore, Malkuth, kingdom within kingdom, 2 kingdoms, 2 discs, 2 Midgars. Honestly, I think the disc thing, God, I'm going down the rails here. A lot of people are like, it's because the game's so big it needs 2 discs. No, not really. That's not really a thing. Some people are saying, one's an installation disc and the other split. Some people are saying one's going to be a Zack disc and one's going to be a Cloud disc. I do think the significance of there being 2 discs could actually be thematic with the story. And I'm going to cover that in the Kabbalistic lore, because there's actually 2 realms broken into 2 significant and meaningful spiritual divisions that I think we are undergoing in FF7. And yeah, while I'll cover the Tifa thing later, I do think that Cloud's mind is so jumbled, his memories between all the dream sequences, the memory fixing his planets, Nova and Sephiroth manipulating it, he doesn't even know himself what's a real memory and what's not. And I think even something like the VR, you know, like stabbing Tifa in front of him, like, does Cloud even hold that clearly in his head? Does it sit there in some sort of subliminal unconscious influence? And, you know, when he's saying, like, I killed her, you know I killed her, right, Cloud? In his mind, he's like, I do think I saw that. Even though that happened in the original, Cloud went and he thought Tifa was dead. You know what I mean? I think Sephiroth is setting it up even more to be even more convincing, where obviously he previously failed. Tifa and Cloud's bond prevailed, so he needs extra methods to break it. And that's what I think the VR segment could be. And that's what I thought Clone Cloud in that shot, walking as a failed hollowed husk. Hollow, the theme song of the first remake, a whole song from the POV of Cloud about becoming hollow, playing at the end. When I combine that with what we saw, or what we didn't see, should I say, which was in that trailer, we did not see Cloud's body. We saw all the others. And when I saw it, I went back and forth, like, okay, so there's been a big tornado, multiple sectors leveled, many casualties. What would they do? Well, obviously they'd come and help the people who are alive. Would they really get like 5-6 soldiers per body to, like, carefully load them onto helicopters and, you know, put blankets on them? Or would they just body bag them? I thought, so they can't be dead. But then I did think, and I will concede, this is of course Avalanche, Square Enix's #1 enemy. So the #1 moneymaker, Shinra's enemy, that they would televise it and tell everyone, propagandize that they're dead, so they would, you know, keep their bodies on display. And of course, there's the idea of a dead body is never just a dead body for Shinra, especially Hojo. There's always something he can do with them. Maybe. Can he do something with a dead body? Or can he do one that is suspended in between life and death? Yes, guys. I thoroughly believe that not only could they potentially be shipping those bodies off to somewhere like Deep Ground, and this is going to be the worst case scenario line, potentially Zack showing up on this line, actually defends them, helps them, protects them, as well as the souls that are abandoned, and Aerith had to put them all onto a new stream. She had to open the access way to a new concentric circle within the numerous ones existing in this remake. But I don't think it is any coincidence, guys, that this was already a thing in the FF7 series, that we had coma spaces. We had, technically, Lucretia is in one. She's suspended in a state of non-death. We had it with Shalua, Shulk's sister in Dirge Cerberus. We see her in her pod at the end. She's in a coma space. This was a thing before, but then when Square Enix set up with Jesse's dad, him there, Jesse researching into planetology, specifically telling us that the theory is that while their bodies are there and they seem gone, dead, comatose, their souls are elsewhere. Their consciousnesses are elsewhere. Square reminded us of that for a reason. And for me, what convinces me that this reality we've just left, the one that is, you know, lost to the corruption, that Sephiroth has gained ultimate checkmate over. That the only way to beat him was to carve out a new path. One that, like Aerith said, not only will we be changing events, we'll be changing ourselves. Maybe that's why I hesitated. She had to take this drastic action because this one was checkmate. This was Dunzo Gonzo. And while all she could do, like she did in Main Shredder's Planet, was guide the souls to a safe haven to wade it out, of which I believe Zack is there. And he's going to be the Guardian. What we are now left with is our characters' comatose bodies. All of them except for Cloud, because what is different about Cloud versus the others? He has Genova cells. And what do Genova cells try to do? They always try to return back to the host, the reunion. They will naturally be led there, even if there's virtually no soul, no consciousness, no actual semblance of a living being within them. That's what the failed clones are. And I think that while their bodies were there, Cloud's, while his soul went off, Cloud's body upped, and on this line, is heading to the reunion. And that clone Cloud, of which I had a big theory on Marco as well, that is all literal. And this would be so cool because it allows Square Enix the creative freedom to just go nuts on one side of things. and show characters and insert things and happenings while not derailing too much the path that we're supposed to be going on. And one of those things that they can do on this timeline that is the worst case scenario is they could bring in the spheres, because there's no coincidence that tornado, they also had it level sector 0, 1 and 2. 0 is the one that has deep ground beneath it. That's the entrance to deep ground. And that getting destroyed, that getting leveled, means that Azul, Shulk, Rosso, Nero, Weiss, they could break out. Now, whether or not people want that, whether or not Square Enix actually do that, I do think it would really fit also with Genesis, returning, picking up Weiss's body, saying there's more to do, brother. The argument that he actually has become Minerva's agent, and in a roundabout way, a guardian of the live stream, but a very severe version of it. Aerith is kind of the free will, more pure aspect of it, and that's what I think the live stream is transitioning more to the souls congregating with her. But we could see that battle, that war getting waged on that side of things. And it makes extra sense to me when you consider that what we've seen throughout the series is that characters have a spiritual body and a physical body. We've seen this numerous times. Like Cloud in his final fight against Sephiroth, they was there at the Northern Crater, he's with the others, they're all like waving at each other and shit. And then all of a sudden Cloud descends. And we actually see it with that visual that's appeared numerous times where you're going through the tunnels, which is essentially the live stream. Cloud doesn't physically go there. That final fight with Sephiroth where he does the Octoslash, he's not physically there. We see it physically, like portrayed to us, but it's only his spirit body, if you will, that has gone there, because he's still there in the Northern Crater with the others. We even see this in like Advent Children. Let's say when Cloud's on the motorbike, he's going along, and then he trips through the portal, the white door. He has that moment with Aerith where he says he's looking for forgiveness, and they're back to back physically. She touches his arm. We see it again with the moment where Loz and Yuzu blow Cloud up, and Aerith comes and touches him, and Zack's there, and this one's too big to adopt. Let's say in that moment on the motorbike, just for example, he hasn't physically gone to that realm, has he? He had a prolonged moment on like a minute or two with Aerith, but then bam, he flicks back to the motorbike in like an instant. And this is another example of where time isn't consistent when it comes to a live stream level. What happens for a day there can happen in a blink of an eye over there. And I think that's also kind of what the 7 seconds at the edge of creation, 7 seconds, what will you do with it? Now the developers did clarify that is literal, like 7 seconds until the universe ends. This is the edge of like existence itself. It's about to end. But several asking, what are you gonna do with those 7 seconds? Well, all of the remake and the trilogy going forward are their 7 seconds. And that's gonna happen across weeks and months and days. But what is significant to hold on to is this spirit body idea, because obviously we went through Destiny's Portal, which seems different to the remake timeline, but this is where the tornado happens, and then we see Cloud swipe at Sephiroth, big explosion, and then we see the vortex again. Now that's where the edge of creation is. So Cloud's only his spirit body has gone to the edge of creation, because it's in the live stream essentially, and that transcends space and time. It's outside of the boundaries of space and time. Like, clearly, Cloud's breathing in space, man. Like, none of it is literal when you take in clearly into your mind the spirit body aspect. And what's highly possible is that when they went through that vortex, there is sound logic to think that also happened with the others. And that actually the rebirth is actually all just their spirit bodies. And then it's like, okay, right, so this is just like a spectral realm or like a soul realm. Well, so was the first part of the remake. What we have to realise is what we are tricked into thinking is corporeal and real, it doesn't exist in Final Fantasy VII as definitively as we think. And I promise, guys, this will be so much clearer on the next videos I talk about with the Kabbalistic tree and the concentric circles, which I will just quickly tease that there's four prime concentric circles, each further and further away from divinity, different levels of purity and impurity. And I think we are transcending up and down these. Like the remake was one, that space we went into was the second. And what I'll just quickly say, I do believe that after Sephiroth was defeated, or allowed the defeat to happen, I mean, he honestly allowed that hit to land on him. What I believe happened is that in that limbo space, memory itself being reconfigured, that after it was settled and Sephiroth had the outcome he wanted, the sparkly doodads descending, just like in the Clypaths. In the Clypaths, when one realm explodes, when one husk, if you will, gets destroyed, it descends down into the lower realm. And they say that what descends into the lower realm is divine light, sparkles of light. I think they call them the nitzes. Basically, these are divinity, and they allow for the animation of life itself. Going into Biggs, think about it. Light from a higher realm descending in, and it even defines that when that light comes down, while that is divine light, it's actually descending deeper into lower and lower and more denser levels of corruption. That's what the 49-day calendar of the Kabbalistic religious marathon that they do describes, is that on the 49th day, it's kingdom within kingdom, Malkuth within Malkuth, density within density, layers of materiality seeping down into one another and having effects on lower and lower grades of it. And what we saw with the sparkles, I believe, was reconfiguring that line, because I think what we've got is still two lines, of which, again, the Kabbalistics have Tokun and I think it's Tikkun, two specifically different realms. I'm more or less blowing my wad on the next video. Just be sure to see it. It's so cool and explains so much. But keeping it simple, and what I think is the definitive difference between these two, what people are calling timelines, but what I believe is states of things, is one is a rewritten aspect where things can be rewritten, altered, changed, manipulated. Now, which is the significance of the beagle turning into the terrier, which is the significance of the very structure and the outskirts and how much of it was built up, literally undergoing a rewrite. And the pen master is Sephiroth on the level. And then the significance of the other one is this hasn't been written at all. This is a new book. This is casting into the unknown. And in that sense, layers 1 and 2 merged on top of each other, which is why we went through Destiny's Portal and we had the tornadoes there, but now the tornadoes have overlaid down onto the destruction that happened on our remake timeline. And I think that, yeah, Aerith departed them, because again, she has the power to do this, like take souls into different places. She's done that with the whole crew. And the thing with Yuffie, for example, or how she's going to retain her memories, I think the moment she does what she did for Nanaki, touch his head, it brought Nanaki's memories back. She could do that for Yuffie at any point, any of our characters, to essentially catch them up. And that's a very, very clever plot device that they've got there. But I'll leave this video off on just a little final theory on what I think is going to happen. I think we've had three of the 4 Kabbalistic concentric circles. I think there is going to be a fourth, and the fourth will happen at Aerith's death. The significance of her dying is what will break another layer, if you will, that we're traversing through. And when that breaks, what I think will happen is that the characters will go shipping back straight to that moment that we've just seen in the trailer of their comatose bodies. Now, again, whether that's instant, because time, we don't know the disparage between one and the other. Now, what I think is clear is that the remake concentric circle, we can actually plot that to it was out of sync by a month. Now, that's why Cloud came a month later. That's why Zack and Aerith crossed. That's why the sparkles there happen also in the remake at the same time, even though there's a month time apart, because time is flowing differently on these different layers. Now, how that's going to play with this, they could either ship back to when they're being loaded into the helicopter, or they could come back to that point when they've been shipped to deep ground, or wherever the hell Shinra are planning to take their bodies. And this would be so freaking cool, because after Aerith's death, in the game, that's when we do have a chance to go back to Midgard. That's when we go into the Sister Ray arc. That's when we have that arc with Tifa and Barrett. She wakes up on the stretcher and they're about to be executed. She escapes. So Tifa and Scarlet have their slapping match. I believe that once the Aerith created concentric circle explodes, we're going to go back to that point that we've just seen in this trailer. It's totally out there. Because what a lot of people think I'm suggesting is that there's 4 timelines, or 5 if you also include OG. And you can imagine how complicated that's going to get, where you think, and I think this is what's going to really mess people's heads up. If we go through this rebirth section, and then we backpedal to freshly tornado-destructed Midgard, or sometime thereabout, we're back to that point. People are going to think we've time travelled. We ain't time travelled, because time ain't really a thing. And actually what is highly possible is that anyone who has ever been in a coma space on one level could be descended, because we don't know if we've ascended or descended. Like, if you think about these gradients, is Aerith trying to go over Sephiroth or trying to go under him? Hell, how much of it was Aerith's choice? No, in this new Rebirth layer, how much control does Sephiroth have over this? How much will one layer have influence onto the other? You know, Jessie, is she going to show up as the princess? Shalua, will she be back into this? Is this actually an opportunity for Lucretia to come into the game and totally evaporate and explode and mess up like Sephiroth's entire essentially mummy issues? And actually I think this Sephiroth potentially trailing on Aerith's ascension or descension, again, which is accessing different levels of the live stream. What I think is that's because you've got to remember, that's where Sephiroth lost his humanity. When he got thrown in to the live stream, he had to let go of everything except for basically his core, like, that bad traits, of which Loz, Yuzu, and Kadaj are manifestations. His narcissism, his lust for power, and his mummy issues. Those are the only things that remained. But if the live stream is being ripped open like this, of which a singularity, and a compression all implies, merged onto each other, as well as being cast into a whole new series of potentialities, that's where Sephiroth could actually reclaim his humanity, which I do believe he wants, not because he wants to have the good side of him back. That's not what this Sephiroth wants. What this Sephiroth wants is a final break away from Jenova. He has this very love-hate relationship with Jenova, and that is shown to us through the clones. It's shown to us at the Northern Crater. That's what shows us when Sephiroth's will transcends Jenova's. That's when the clones stop saying reunion and stuff, and they start saying Sephiroth. They start throwing themselves off the crater, and that's where we just happen to see a clone cloud who could potentially act as both a vessel that Sephiroth has been searching for, as well as, I don't want to say it, I'll spoil it, but just think about some of the dark stuff that Cloud does in OG, or potentially does, or almost goes to do, and what that would look like if that was done through a hollowed out Cloud. I don't want to say anymore. There it is, guys. That is why I don't believe they're dead. I think there's way more complexity at play, and I'm going to really drop a lot of that lore that's going to blow your nips off in some of the upcoming videos. And it's also really cool, although whether you think they're dead or not dead, all valid. Again, this is just speculation. I'm just guessing as much as anyone else, but I did do a poll, guys, and this was the result. I asked you whether you guys think they're dead or not dead in the scene. 28.4 of you said it did. Over half of you said nope, it's something else, and 18.3% of you, your brain just bloody hurts. No, honestly, so does mine. I really wasn't being expected to be thrown back into this tunnel, but it's really, really cool. I just love talking about all things Final Fantasy VII. I would have liked this to come after 16. I will be a little bit honest, it's kind of derailed my ability to stay focused on some of the 16 lore, which, if you are interested, just before the game comes out, none of these are spoiled, but I released a whole series of Gnostic related video that honestly there's a lot here. There's a lot of juicy juice that I personally think you're going to really enjoy going into 16 having this in your head. But thank you very much, guys, and I will see you all on the next video. I really need to pee. Kupo!